All right, well, good morning, everybody. Nice to have everybody join us today. Let me just mute everybody real quick. Nice to have you all here today. This is our monthly guest. Most of you know Edie. She's a local resident here in Venice, and she's also a Davis Finney Foundation ambassador. And so we're going to do a little interview with her, and then she's going to share with us some movement that we can enjoy today to get active. So thanks for doing this, Edie. We appreciate that.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
So Edie, you were diagnosed with PD way back in 2013, but you've been dealing with serious health problems since you were a young adult. Maybe you could tell us some of those medical issues and how do those compare to what you're experiencing with Parkinson's?
Okie doke. I'm going to give you the short version because I can talk about this for quite some time, but to sum up my medical challenge history, I've had 15 surgeries under anesthesia and I have 35 surgical scars to show for it. So I've been around the block when it comes to things like that. But I only want to talk about two things that I dealt with prior to Parkinson's and talk about how that relates. If we go all the way back to 1984 and 85, I had a condition called thoracic outlet syndrome, which at the time most people had never heard of. It's basically where the brachial plexus, it's a group of nerves that come out of the neck and go down the shoulder and arm. And there was an impingement. They weren't sure why. But all I know is it was 24-hour-a-day pain for several years. They finally did 2 surgeries to help relieve the pain by taking out 2 of my ribs. Unfortunately, it didn't really work very well, and I still had a significant amount of pain, discomfort, weakness for quite some time. The reason I bring all this up is I want to introduce at this point the name of the neurologist that I was working with at the time. His name was Dr. Hormel. He was literally just out of med school, and he was a wonderful doctor. And 30 years later, he is now a Parkinson's doctor, or he was until I moved here from Virginia. So he played an important role in my life more than once. After a year and a half of therapy and pain management, I was really not any better. My insurance was running out, and my last visit with Dr. Hormel, he said something that both was upsetting, but also got my attention and kicked my butt. He said if I didn't figure out how to regain my strength, manage the pain and function, I was going to be bedridden by the time I was 50. At the time, I was 32 years old, and that was a scary thing to hear, was you're going to be bedridden. So I figured it out eventually. I figured out a way to get functioning again, and here I am. I just turned 70, and I'm definitely not bedridden, so I'm happy to share that part with you. Let's fast forward it to the really big thing I had to deal with, which was in 2011. I was sitting in my doctor's office, and he walked in. He sat down, and he scooted his chair all the way up to where our knees were touching. And he looked at me, and he said, "There's no easy way to tell you this. You have breast cancer." And I just went, I didn't say anything. I just, nothing came out. And then he did something very, very profound and that made all the difference in the world. He looked at me and he went like this. He said, "Look at me. We can fix this." And I said, "Okay." And during the course of that conversation, 2 words came up that were scary when we talked about the biopsy report, the word rare and aggressive with regards to the tumor. So I knew that something, I really needed to be aggressive in the treatment. So I underwent 3 surgeries, several rounds of chemo, lost my hair, had no color, looked like The Walking Dead, you name it. But again, it's been more than 12 years, and I'm here to tell you they fixed it. And so when somebody says we can fix this, it gives you something to fight for. Coming then to the year 2013, again, I was sitting in the doctor's office. He after an hour and a half of being examined, discussing things, he knew that I was very familiar with Parkinson's because a dear friend of mine had it, and she was actually at the point where she was bedridden. And when I had developed the twitch, sorry, my hand's twitching now because I'm talking about it. When I developed the twitch, the first thing that went through my mind was, oh, I hope this isn't Parkinson's. And I even asked some of my doctors, could this be Parkinson's? And they said, oh no, you're young, you're healthy, you're in good shape. Nah, it's not Parkinson's. Well, like I said, I was sitting in Dr. Hormel's office. After an hour and a half, he looked at me and he said, you know what this is, don't you? And I said, yeah, I just needed you to confirm it. And then he didn't do something. I was waiting for it, but he didn't go like this. And he didn't say, look at me. And he didn't say, you can fix this. And that's when my world, like many of you have experienced, it kind of, it implodes. And you're like lost. And it put me in a dark place for a long time. We call it the pity party. I was there much longer than I needed to be, but I didn't know how to get out of it till somebody gave me some good advice. I had the good sense to seek out a Parkinson's support group where I lived in Virginia. And the first meeting was a little scary. I didn't know what to expect. But while I was there, another woman, I guess she must have sensed that I needed a little help. So she kind of palled up with me, took me to lunch, listened to me go, meh, 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 meh. And finally she said, I'm going to tell you something. She said, these are the cards you've been dealt. She looked at me and she said, play your cards. And then she said, play to win. And I just went, oh. And I thought, what she was telling me was, don't wait for somebody else to fix you or to make things better for you. You need to do that on your own. You need to take the initiative to figure out what you need to do. And so I took her advice and I got myself to a gym. I started working out a lot. I became a workout junkie. And all of that eventually led to my becoming an ambassador for the Davis Finney Foundation.
So I have some advice for you. Don't go to doctors anymore. They won't give you any bad news.
Right.
I know, I'm only kidding. I know. So you said you became a workout junkie, but then you also became an ambassador for the Davis Finney Foundation. How did you find out about the Davis Finney Foundation? What's their mission? What makes them different than other organizations for PD?
Well, first let me answer about the workout junkie. The person that spoke at the first Parkinson's support group meeting that I went to was a young man. He was in his mid-30s, and he was sharing his experience with being diagnosed with Parkinson's. But he was telling us that he was able at that point in his life to manage his symptoms through exercise. He was a marathon runner, and he had come off of his medications, and he didn't have a tremor, and he seemed to be functioning really well. And I looked at him and I said, I want to be like that. So I got to the gym and I started working out pretty regularly. And it was the personal trainers at the gym that basically nicknamed me the workout junkie because I was there all the time. So that's how I started doing that. As far as becoming an ambassador, this young man, his name was David. He was affiliated with this group, and he did some projects with them. And there was a conference that was coming up at the time. It was, for some of you might remember this if you were around then, it was the Partners in Parkinson's Conference in Washington, D.C. back in 2015. The Davis Finney Foundation was one of the partners in that arrangement, and they were going to, one of their workshops was a panel discussion. And the people on the panel were people with Parkinson's, and they wanted to talk about the benefits of things like exercise and good nutrition. And there was one seat left. And they wanted someone who was a woman in the early 60s, who was in fairly good condition, who exercised and ate a good balanced diet. I can't say I always eat the best diet, but anyway. So my friend David gave them my name, and long story short, they invited me to join, and I was on the panel for that workshop. Afterwards, the executive director of the Davis Finney Foundation asked me if they ever needed my help again, would I be interested? And I said, oh, absolutely, call me. 6 months later, I got a phone call that said they were starting an ambassador program. Would I be interested in participating? And I ended up being one of the first 10 that started this program. And they now have more than 100 ambassadors throughout the country. So the program has been very successful and has grown.
So what does being an ambassador involve on your end?
Well, I forgot to answer your question about the mission. The mission of the Davis Finney Foundation is pretty basic, pretty straightforward and simple. They encourage people with Parkinson's to live well by making good lifestyle choices. So, and we know that to be things like eating right, exercising, taking your meds, all that sort of thing. So, being an ambassador then, it's all about making connections. Connecting primarily with people who are newly diagnosed who, like most of us remember, we get the diagnosis and we don't know what to do. We don't know where to turn. Our world has ended. What do you do? So if you have someone you can talk to, you find out you're not the only person dealing with this. You find out there are people out there who have very fulfilling lives, who are happy, who are living with Parkinson's. So there's a way to do that. And as an ambassador, the only skill you need is a listening ear. You want to be able to listen to people who need somebody to talk to. And then basically we guide them through some of the steps of researching about Parkinson's, and just encouraging them to do whatever they can to improve their quality of life. So in making connections, we do that mostly on one-on-one discussions, emails, texts, or on the phone. We do group presentations, special events, webinars, and I've had the privilege and benefit of being able to do all of those things in the past few years.
Well, that's so nice that you're able to share in that activity. I always tell people that when they're first diagnosed, that their very first website they should go to is dpf.org, and they need to get the Every Victory Counts manual, the Parkinson's Bible, we call it. So, in all your training and experience and things that since your diagnosis, what are 3 things you feel can really help everyone with PD to live well today?
The 3 things I'm going to mention. The first one I never thought I would say, but I've learned the hard way that you have to do this. You have to comply with your doctor's recommendations to take your meds. I'm not a fan of meds either, but this is a disease that has no cure. So the next step or level where we find ourselves is, how do we manage it? How do you live with it? And one of the things that you really should consider is taking the medication to control your symptoms. So your choices are, you can either have the symptoms or keep them under control, or at least minimize them. So taking your meds is important. Equally important is exercise. Now, when I first got diagnosed, exercise was strongly recommended. Since then, they've done research studies, scientific studies, to show that exercise can affect the progression of the disease, primarily by slowing it down, which is something medication can't do. So exercise is just as important as taking your medicine. And then the third thing, most people say diet. I don't. I say nourishment, because there's more than one kind of food. You've got your physical food, which you need to eat to sustain your body. But then there's spiritual food that's important, as well as what I call creative food. Doing things that help you to express yourself, to elicit emotions that are, happy feelings, things like that. So in the Every Victory Counts book, there's a statement about wellness. All of us want to achieve wellness. And wellness includes 3 important aspects of our health: our physical health, our mental health, and our spiritual health. Those things need to be balanced in order to truly to feel well. And so that's what we encourage people to do.
Okay, thanks for sharing those 3 points. Medication, exercise, and nourishment. So I know today you're here to talk to us about music and movement. Now I noticed that when you said movement, or when you sent me this the text for our interview, you spelled movement with two O's. Did you do that on purpose, or was that just a typo?
It wasn't a typo. I kind of made that up because music affects our mood. That's where the two O's come from. And when I say that, when you play music, you can make somebody happy, you can make them sad, you can make them cry, you can make them excited, you can even put them to sleep. So there's all sorts of moods that you can trigger with music. As far as movement, music stimulates the body to move, and therefore I put the M-O-O with the M-E-N-T and created the word movement, which is pretty much what I want to work on or demonstrate to you today.
How does that kind of movement help with things like such as walking? You know, it's a common task. All of us, some of us have more challenge with freezing and things like that. But how do you find that music helps with that aspect?
Well, in getting ready for this part, I did some reading on various research studies that involve music and movement in people with Parkinson's. And the one I found the most interesting was by the National Institute of Health. They did a research study, and they explained that the part of the brain that controls walking is the basal ganglia. And when that part is affected by Parkinson's, it can either send interrupted signals, which accounts for the stuttering of your feet, or it can stop altogether and you experience the freezing. So music serves as an external cue. And we all know what external cues do when you freeze. If you are frozen and you draw a line, or you shine a red light, or you do something to send a different signal to your brain, then sometimes you can continue walking. Well, music can bypass the basal ganglia and send signals directly to your feet to move rhythmically. It's very similar to people who stutter when they speak, but they can sing. So it just shows that the brain can compensate, and you can develop new pathways to accomplish the goal.
Yeah, you mentioned an article by Dr. Matthew Ford about movement, and music. What was that all about?
That also was an interesting article. It was movement is a result of timing, and there are two timers. The brain, he described as the internal timer, and then the music is an external timer. And when you put the two timers together, you get movement. For instance, when you're listening to a really nice piece of music, you might find yourself tapping your toes, bobbing your head, clicking your tongue, snapping your fingers, which you can't do anymore because I have arthritis. But you get the picture. Music tends to make you bounce around a little bit or move. When the two timers are in sync, they call that rhythm. And some people, they got two timers, but they don't always sync. So you don't necessarily have rhythm. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't move. You should still do whatever you want to as far as expressing yourself. And I'm going to go ahead and say it. The movement that we're going to be doing is technically called dance.
So what are the benefits specifically of dance in this area?
Two areas. We've got the physical benefits. When you dance, like most exercise, you're going to improve your strength, your flexibility, your coordination, and for us, most of all, balance, very important. And all of that comes through different dance moves. But also, there's a cognitive benefit. There's what I call dance, and then there's dance. And by that I mean, you could turn on the music, you can get up and move around, and you're dancing, and that's wonderful, it's good for you. But the kind of dance that I like to do, and that I'm going to share with you today, are routines that are choreographed, that challenge you more cognitively, because now you're going to involve learning the steps, planning ahead because the steps repeat throughout the course of the music. You have to remember what those steps are. You have to execute them. So you get the picture. There's more involved in executive or cognitive function when you have routines that you learn, and that's what I'd like to share with all of you today.
So we can be like, what movie was that Tom Cruise was in? He was dancing in his underwear. I forgot the name of that movie. Dirty Dancing.
No underwear.
Okay. All right, so Edie's going to give us a demonstration. So why don't you get set up? I'll get the music cued, and when you're ready, let me know. I'll unspotlight myself, so it'll just be Edie on the screen.
Oh boy, just me.
Just
right.
you.
Before we get started, let me tell you this. Please don't do anything that causes you discomfort or pain or that's uncomfortable in any way. If this is something you don't care to participate in, please feel free to watch and enjoy. So I'm going to let you police yourself as far as the amount of activity you care to join in. We do most of this activity in a chair, so you don't even have to stand up unless you want to. And normally when I teach these routines, I take a lot of time to explain what the moves, how they benefit you physically, because a lot went into not just being creative in these routines, but also doing movements that we benefit from as far as targeting the hands and wrists, the elbows, the hips, parts that tend to get stiff. So I'm not going to have time to go into a lot of detail about that, but just know that there was some thought that went into the actual choreography with benefits in mind. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to start off with something very easy to do, and each one is going to get a little bit, not more complicated, but different. So you'll see a variety of different ways to move and have fun with dance. My first one, I'm going to scoot my chair back so you can see me better. And ideally, if you have a chair without arms, it works best. But if you've got a chair with arms, just be careful not to bump your elbows when we do so. We're going to start off, whenever you do an exercise or an activity, you want to do a little bit of a warm-up, a little bit of stretch, and a little bit of range of motion to make sure your joints are moving. So this first routine is more exercise than dance, but it's a combination of the two things. We're going to do what's called range of motion or isolation exercises, where we target, for instance, the neck, the shoulders, the rib cage, your spine, even your pelvis. But first, let me teach you the dance part. It's real simple. We start off with something we call jazz hands. So when you stretch out your fingers as far as they can go and you push your hand forward. So you go push, push, then snap them back and pull your hands into a fist. Then you're going to pop them open and closed. And then crisscross touch your shoulders. Let's repeat that. So jazz hands, back, open and close, cross. Then the next part, you're doing jumping jacks. You can just do the arms. If you'd like to use your legs, which you can, then you need to lean back on your chair to take the weight off your feet. So you can do 1, 2, 3. Great. You're already dancing. That's the dance part of this whole routine. The rest of it is exercise. So we start off, we're going to rotate our heads. Now, if you're like me, I can't get my chin over very far anymore. So take your finger, 1 or 2, on your chin and gently give a little bit of a nudge to make it stretch a little further. And you go the other way. We do it 4 times. The second part is a head roll. Only roll downward. At our age, you don't want to roll where your head is up like that because you can create problems in the back of your neck if you have any arthritic issues or nerve problems. So keep your head down when you roll, and that will stretch your neck, your traps, and the upper shoulders. After you do that, then we do the jazz hands. The second isolation movement, we're going to do the shoulders. You roll them twice back, twice forward. Good. Then we're going to do our rib cage. If you have a chair without arms, hold on to the bottom or hold on to your arms. And you're going to shift your rib cage over, swing it around the front to the other side, swing it around again. You're also rotating your pelvis, which is a good thing to do. All right, very good. So we did the shoulders, the rib cage, then we repeat this. Okay? The last part, we're going to stretch our sides 4 times. Good. And the last part is like a wave. I want you to lean forward, but lead with your chest, not your head. So you're kind of going to wave like this. You're going to go forward. Last thing that drops is your head. And then when you come back up, it's as if somebody's pulling your spine. So you're going to be pulled up, and the last thing that comes up is your head. And you do 2 of those. Forward and up. And now we're going to cue it to music and see how it goes. Okay, Roger, give us some music.
Here we go.
Pull it down. Okay, good. Again. Sorry. Shoulders. Reverse. Back hand. Side stretch.
Very
Nice
nice.
job, everybody. See, you're dancing. And people think, oh, you're sitting in chairs, you're not going to get a good workout. Well, I guarantee you in the few minutes that we do this, you're going to feel like you've had a workout. All right, let's go into something a little bit different, a little more peppy, a little more fun, but not too hard to learn. It's only got 3 parts to it. We start off, and you'll find that I like to use similar movements in my different routines. They're the same, but also different. For instance, this one starts off with jazz hands as well. But instead of popping, we're going to just touch twice. You can touch your shoulders, or you can just do this. You can modify it and do it any way you like. So we're doing jazz hands, crisscross. And you do that twice. And then you do what we refer to as chicken wings. You can just do this. You can stylize it. You can do your hands out like this. You can do this, or you can do just thumbs. Any way you want. So add your own little twist to that. So the first whole step is jazz hands, crisscross, crisscross, jazz hands, crisscross, and then you do about 8 chicken wings. The second part I call circles. Hands are flat, and you're going to make circles like you're hovering over top of the table. Now, I want you to take and do whatever you want with these circles. You can make little ones, you can make big ones, you can make them in the same direction, you can even do them in front of you. So just make a bunch of circles and move your arms around. And the third step is called diamond jacks. It's like jumping jacks, only you make a point at the top, straighten it, and make a point at the bottom, and straighten it. Now this gives you a lot of rotation in the shoulder, so if you have a bad shoulder, be careful with this one. So you're going to go up and down, up. Very good. That's all there is to it, those 3 parts. I'll announce what they are because some of them we repeat, some of them we don't. I just have to kind of listen to the music and hopefully we'll get hopefully I'll get it right. Okay, Roger, cue on music for us.
Here we go.
All the little birds on Jaybird Street love to hear the robin go tweet, 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 rockin' robin, tweet, tweet, rockin' robin, slow rockin' robin, 'cause we're really gonna rock 'em tonight. Every little swallow, every chickadee, every little bird in the tall oak tree, the wise or loud, the big black crow, flap of their wings, sing and go, birds go, rockin' robin, tweet, rockin' robin, slow rockin' robin, 'cause we're really gonna rock tonight. A pretty little raven at the birdman stand, talked him out to the bump and it was grand. They started going steady and bless my soul. He out popped the buzzard and the Oreo. He rocks in the treetop all day long, hopping and a-popping and a-singing his song. All the little birds on Jaybird Street love to hear the robin go tweet, 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 rockin' robin, tweet, tweet, rockin' robin, slow rockin' robin, 'cause we're really gonna rock tonight. Well, the pretty little raven at the birdman stand taught him how to do the bop and it was grand. They started going steady and bless my soul. He out popped the buzzard and the Oreo. He rocks in the treetop all day long, hopping and a-bopping and a-singing his song. All the little birds on Jaybird Street love to hear the robin go tweet, 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 rockin' robin, tweet, tweet, rockin' robin, slow rockin' robin, 'cause we're really gonna rock tonight.
Hope you're having fun.
That was fun.
Okay, great. Everybody doing all right? Anybody need a break? If you need a drink of water, please do. I probably should take some.
Is there any way we can get a tape of that so we can
I'll be making the recording available for this later on this week with all the exercises.
Terrific.
Okay, step it up a little bit. We're going to do one that's got a little bit more choreography to it. But again, I'll cue you and pretty basic. We're going to start off with your arms like this, and they're going to be loose, and they're going to be like pendulums. And when I tell you, when we start, we're going to swing our arm out, and the music, it sounds like cymbals. So you're going to be striking the cymbal. We'll do that 4 times. Then the next part, You've all seen the guys on the tarmac that park the airplanes that are coming into the gate and they're going like this. All right, so we're gonna park the plane. So we're gonna park it, park it, park it. I call the next step stack it. You're gonna take your hand and slide it like this, then you stack the other one on top and stack and keep getting higher until you're up over your head. Now you gotta bring your arms back down, and I'm gonna call it pump it. I want you to pump your arms backwards, so you're gonna be doing this on the way down. So you're gonna pump it down till you get down here. The next step is called slap it. You stretch your arms out and slap your hands like this. Good, we do like 8 of those. Then the next cue will be flap it. Again, it's like wings, so you're gonna flap your wings. Again, you can stylize it, you can do whatever you want. So let's review. You're gonna plank, well, I don't know how to call it. You just tap it. Then we park it. Then we stack it. Then we pump it. Good. Then we slap it. 8 of those. And the last thing is we flap it. Now in between all of that, there's one more thing, and I'll call it out. I call it chop it. You're gonna put your hands like fingertips together and make like the shape of a ball. And we're gonna sling our hands, and I want you to keep your hands loose. Don't keep them stiff. The object of this is I want you to shake out the wrists. Get all the little tightness out of your hands and your wrists. So you're gonna chop it. And when we do this, you can chop little bits, you can make big chops, you can make chops all over. Add your own little style to it. At the end of this dance, I'm going to basically invite you to do your own thing, and I often do that in my choreography. I'll announce that it's time to improvise. So at the end of this song, it repeats the same lyric for a while, and at that point, if you're able and you want to, you can get up and bop around the room. Do whatever your music moves you to do. So anyway, this one's is actually literally a happy tune. And we're going to ask Roger to go ahead and cue the music. Remember, we start in this position.
Okay, here we go.
It might seem crazy what I'm about to say. Sunshine, she's here, you can take a break. I'm a hot air balloon that could go to space. With the air, like I don't care, baby, by the way. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do. Here come bad news talking this and that. Well, give me all you got and don't hold it back. Well, I should probably warn you, I'll be just fine. No offense to you, don't waste your time. Here's why. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do. Hey, bring me down, can't know. what you want to do. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do.
Just drop it again.
Bring me down, can't nothing bring me down. The love is too high to bring me down. Can't nothing bring me down. I said, clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you. Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you. Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do.
Folks, I hope you're enjoying yourselves. And this brings us to the last routine. I think we have time for one more. I'll do it real quick. This one's a short one, but it's to a Latin beat. So Latin music tends to make us move differently. We rotate our head, we gyrate, we kind of sway, we add a little bit of emotion to the dance. This one also, I built in a little attitude. So here's how it goes. We start off with the introduction, we just kind of get into the music, move your hips around a little bit. And then to start, we're going to do a torso rotation, but we're going to do it kind of like a snap. Take that shoulder and pull it back, so you're going to go like a snap to the side. Then I want you to lean just a little bit, if you can, and when you do that, drop your chin, because that's the attitude part. So you're going to go snap, and down. Then you reach forward and you're going to pull yourself back up to the front position. So try that with me. Snap, dip, reach, pull up. Then you do the other side. Snap, down, reach, pull up. Then we're going to row a boat. You grab the oars in front of you and pull them towards you. Twice. Now your hands are wet, so I want you to sling the water off your hands. Good job. And repeat the whole thing. So you snap, turn, down, reach, pull up, turn, up, chin, reach, pull up. Row the boat, and then sling the water off your hand. Now we're going to do a modified patty cake. We tap your legs twice, clap twice. Tap, clap. Then you're going to do 2 punches, 2 jabs. 1, 2, 1, 2. The next step I call pulling tapping. You put your hands together like this. You pull them apart just a little bit, but when you do that, you flatten out your hand, your fingers. When you do that, you bend your knees slightly if you're standing. So I want you to go like this. 1. And you do 4 of these. Each one is a little bit further apart. And then 4s go all the way. Good. Now you're going to stretch that tapping all the way across. You take one end of it, reach over your head. You bring the other end together, cross at the wrist. You're going to lean forward, and all of a sudden the music will make a bumping sound, like a bump, and you just kind of work with your feet like that. All right, then we're going to chop. But instead of chopping like this, we're going to chop backwards. Twice. Backwards. Then we'll swim. And chop again. Again. And swim, swim. And we end with rowing the boat one more time. Swim your hands. And then literally the music we'll say stop, and we want you to just put your hands up like that. Okay. Now, Roger, make sure I hear the intro on this so I get on track with it right away.
Okay, here we go.
Get ready. And then ready, start.
This is that ice cold Michelle fight for that white gold. This one for them hood girls, them good girls, straight masterpieces. Stylin', wildin', living it up in the city. Got Chuck's on with Saint Laurent. Gotta kiss myself, I'm so pretty. I'm too hot. Call the police and the fireman. I'm too hot. Make a dragon wanna retire, man. I'm too hot. Say my name, you know who I am. I'm too hot.
Okay.
And my band bought that money, break it down. Girls hit you, hallelujah. Girls hit you, hallelujah. Girls hit you, hallelujah. 'Cause Uptown Funk don't give it to you. 'Cause Uptown Funk don't give it to you. 'Cause Uptown Funk don't give it to you. Saturday night and we in the spot. Don't believe me, just watch.
Stop it. Good.
Don't believe me, just watch.
Stop.
Don't believe me, just watch. 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 Hey, 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 oh! Stop. Wait a minute. Fill my cup, put some nigga in it. Take a sip, sign the check. Julio.
Sorry, we didn't have the cue for stopping. It ended up here. Good job. Well, folks, that's it. I want to thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you see that this can be a fun way to exercise, and I hope everybody feels good after doing it.